What's going on, Mother Truckers? Welcome to Mother Trucker News. Emails at mothertruckernews@gmail.com. We have our friend John on the show once again. Last week, we talked about that 72-hour blitz, and the video, it was extremely educational. People loved it. And, I really appreciate you for that. So if you have any questions about anything to do with inspections, rules, or regulations, my guy John has the answers. And so, introduce yourself real quick. Give them the, 20-second rundown.
Yeah, so my name's John Seidel. I used to be a state patrol inspector. I was an investigator with the feds. I sell insurance. I'm a DOT consultant, and I have a website called truckingwins.com. It's just a one-stop source to get all the information you need to be successful in running a trucking company, and if you're a driver, and getting the answers that sometimes are hard to find.
I got that. So in this video, if you're going to have any questions, definitely go to John's site. I'll put descriptions and links down below so that you guys can see that. And he knows what he's talking about, right? He's done this for years. And so the reason why we're doing this video is after we did the video, there was a comment that kept on coming up, right? John, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, it's like we're talking about tractor protection valve. We were talking about drugs and alcohol and some maintenance issues. And, every 10 questions or comments came up. Well, what about English speaking drivers? Why don't they have a blitz and focus on that? So we thought, let's do a little education here on what the government actually does as it relates to these English speaking drivers. How do they do the inspection? How do these drivers pass or not pass the inspections?
No, I appreciate that. And I know this is it could be a heated conversation for a lot of people. So we're here, we're talking about the topic, but we're going to stick to the facts, and we can let you know all the things you need to know. And then from there, you can take that information and do what you feel is right.
So how the government does this, a lot of times they write regulations, and the regulations are pretty clear, so they don't need memos and guidance and everything. So let's read the regulation for English-speaking drivers first. This is a little slide here, but it's at the very bottom. Here's what it says in the regulation, basically the quote law. That driver must be able to read and speak the English language sufficiently to converse with the general public. Here's another one. To understand highway traffic signs and signals in the English language, to respond to official inquiries by like inspectors, and then they have to make entries on reports and records like logbooks, etc. But that's it. That's all the law says regarding this violation. So that leaves it up to interpretation. And there's a lot of inconsistency in enforcement when all you have is one sentence that is written exactly like that. So what does the government do? They come out with a memo, right? It's an English language proficiency memo. And they did that. In 2016, we have our current memorandum for English language proficiency. This isn't interpretations like personal conveyances or adverse conditions and agricultural exemption. This is an internal memo on how they want enforcement to handle these inspections. Pretty crazy.
Can you break down what the memo says?
Yep, 100%. So this is the most current memo. This isn't the first one they ever wrote. Back in 2007 and 2008, they wrote two other memos on the same topic. Tried the first round. They wanted to tweak it. In 2008, they tried another round. And with these memos, they actually pulled up a page and they pointed to street signs and conducted a formal interview of the driver. They did that from 2008 to 2016, and there was a lot of inconsistencies in people that were placed out of service or in violation. So then they came out and said, listen, this new memo from 2016, we're not going to conduct interviews of the drivers. We're not going to pull up street signs and point to them and make the driver communicate. We're going to take a different approach. And this is the crazy part of this memo. It literally says, if the driver cannot read, write, or speak English, but can communicate sufficiently, he should not be cited. Wait a minute. If he cannot read, write, or speak, but he can communicate sufficiently, he should not be cited. Well, what does communicate sufficiently mean? Well, that gets into this next paragraph. Tools to facilitate the communication. Interpreters, I speak cards, cue cards, Smartphone apps. They can take their iPhone or their Samsung, whatever your preference is, go on their little app and talk into it with the inspector and use that to pass the inspection. You can actually hire an on-call interpretation service. Look at the last sentence, mother trucker. Use of these devices, meaning interpreters, speak cards, smartphone apps, does not constitute a violation. So no more formal interviews. Even if you can't read, write, or speak, but you can set yourself up with these tools, you should not be cited.
I'm sure a lot of our listeners are going to be listening to this and watching this, and they're going to be extremely shocked about this. And so, one thing I can say to you is, if you keep on saying you're worried about something, well, hey, if this memo is something that doesn't make you happy, then talk to your associations, talk to your state association that you're in. Would you recommend if they reach out to Washington, D.C. to change this memo? Because like you said, it's been changed 3 times now in the last, 15 years?
Yeah, since 2007, we've had 3 versions of this memo, and they're always somewhat different. Now, where does a memo, an internal enforcement memo, differ from interpretation like personal conveyance? That interpretation like personal conveyance has to go through a whole, basically, rulemaking-ish process. You need a federal register. You need to get comments to the register. You got to do a final notice in a federal register, and then it becomes an official interpretation. That's not what this is. This is simply an employee and or a body of employees in Washington, D.C. that published a memorandum to give to enforcement, teaching them how to apply that regulation to roadside inspections. And they're allowed to use these interpreters. So how do you change this? You got to get Washington, D.C. to change this memo if you don't like it. If you're you work the rail, you go to your rail yard association, your intermodal association. If you do flatbed, go to your flatbed association. If you're a tanker, go to your tanker association. No matter what kind of trucking you do, go to your associations and have your associations put some pressure on the government to get this changed if that's what you want. I would assume that there are several questionable English-speaking drivers out there that don't want this changed because they use these services and these tools to pass the inspection and continue to drive. Regulation, we'll go back to that. It's on the screen. It says you have to understand traffic signs and signals. Well, an interesting part about this memorandum is while you are doing an inspection, you're not reading signs and signals. You're just completing the inspection. So this interpreter is helping you complete the inspection, but who is interpreting the signs as you're driving down the road?
Put your link down in the descriptions.
Yep.
And we'll be good. I know this video is going to touch a lot of heartstrings, but if you're going to talk about something, you should at least talk about the facts, and that's what we're doing here on Mother Trucker News. So, John, I appreciate you always for being on the show. I love you, brother, and everybody go check out my guy. So
I appreciate everybody too. Drive safe, everybody out there.